Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Action Comics Ambush Bug Academy Edition, plus Ambush Bug number 1 through 4, encompassing his first mini-series. This was a DC comic, and it is crazy fun. I got these off the stands when I was, probably 16, and I had never seen such crazy madcap humor in a mainstream comic. These are actually really funny and amazingly clever, and they just throw jokes against the wall. Every panel is packed with jokes, a lot of nerdy comic references. That's part of why I liked it a lot, and I'll try to point out as many of them as I can because there's so many. But I loved these comics when I was a kid. They were unlike anything else I was reading, especially for Marvel and DC, and I still love them today. Last night I read these all, and I had a great time. I haven't read these in so long, and I was like, oh, they might be just really lame, but I still think they're funny. And also the art in here is amazing. So this is the Action Comics Ambush Bug Academy Edition, but I should call it the Academy Scraps, because I didn't staple it or glue it or anything. I just ripped the Ambush Bug stories out of these 3 Action Comics issues because I didn't want the rest of it. The rest of it was crap, and I just do that to pare down my collection. I don't have much shelf space, so I have a bunch of these comics where I just ripped out the stuff I didn't like. So we see Ambush Bug on the cover, substituting Superman's logo, which is fallen on the ground, with his own. Ambush Bug starring in Action Comics. This is number 560. It's from October 1984. Of course, Superman's looking very peeved. All of the art in these issues is by Keith Giffen and inked by classic Superman artist Bob Oksner. Probably drew thousands of pages for Mort Weisinger super titles over the years. And he adds a really nice, interesting flair to Giffen's art. So here we start. Now, as you can see, this is when Giffen started to get weird. This is right there. Like a year before this, he was totally drawing straight in Legion of Superheroes. He was a fan favorite. And then somebody must have handed him a comic drawn by Carlos Sampoyo, the great Argentinian cartoonist, because he just started drawing like him. And for a mainstream comic, the art was crazy. I mean, it's amazing that they still gave him work. They didn't say, what the hell are you doing? This art looks weird. He totally thrived in DC, probably because he was writing such good stuff. But, he's well known for his Carlos Sampoyo adulation, to the point of plagiarizing him. Comics Journal had an article a year or two after this showing panels that he pretty much just didn't trace, but they're really close. But suffice to say, it just looks great. So, yeah, he went a little too far. But the weird thing is I noticed from looking at this, I also see lots of Alex Toth. And especially because the Bob Oksner inks, because he makes it a little more classic. Look at that Superman face. It doesn't necessarily look like Giffen, any era of Giffen. So we start off, we see the offices of Ambush Bug Enterprises. And he's basically like a superhero for hire. And we see him mopping while he's singing Whip It by Devo. And who should walk in the door but Clark Kent? And Ambush Bug says, my first client. And Clark Kent thinks, I can't believe they let this guy out of Arkham Asylum. So Ambush Bug puts on his hard-boiled film noir outfit, and trench coat and a cool hat, fedora. And Clark Kent says, I'm here to interview you. And all of a sudden, Ambush Bug interrupts him and says, wait a second, I know that profile. You're Superman. And Clark Kent is like, oh, a lot of people say there's a resemblance. He's all sweating. And he's like, no way. You're totally Superman. And he even reaches into his jacket and pulls out his cape. And he rips off all of his clothing. He even licks his thumb and makes the cowlick on Superman's head. So Superman is revealed, and he's just laughing. He's just like, I can't believe people fall for that stupid disguise. Which is funny, because Ambush Bug's nuts. He's crazy, but he's not stupid. And it's kind of amazing that nobody else has figured this out in the history of DC Comics. People have talked about this for decades. And basically, Superman just flies off in a huff. He's like, this motherfucker. But there's another thing about this period in Keith Giffen's art. If you notice, no gutters in between the panels. He totally had the style where just a thin line in between every panel. Sometimes it gets a little confusing, I gotta say. It's not my favorite method, especially when you constantly use it. Like P. Craig Russell will do it for like a sequence to make it more cinematic. But the whole comic is like this. And sometimes there is some ambiguous alignments where you're like, oh, the panel's ending there. I thought that was the wall or something, you know? So now Ambush Bug tells us the story of Erwin Schwab, who was raised by a television set. And one day his TV broke. So he went into a library and started reading. And he read lots of newspapers, and he realized that there was riots, murders, drugs, nuclear war, teenage hitchhikers even going on in the world. And he realized that he has to do something about it. And so shaves his head for some reason, and with his Ambush Bug outfit and these little kind of robotic bugs, he has the power to teleport to wherever these bugs are. So these bugs are everywhere. They're just thousands of them all over the place. And if there's a bug there, he can teleport to it. So that's a superpower. And so he becomes Ambush Bug and decides to right the wrongs of the world. And then it says, please stand by. And now we see Clark Kent. And he's waking up from a dream about Ambush Bug. And he's like, God damn it, I can't stop thinking about this guy. And I like this line. He says, maybe if I try to stop thinking about not thinking about him, I'll stop thinking about him. And he says, I don't believe I just thought that. He opens the newspaper. There's an ad for Ambush Bug right there. And he's just ticked off. He just cannot stop thinking about Ambush Bug. Very interesting interpretation of Superman here. So now we see Arkham Asylum. The director is talking to Darwood Denton. He's the therapist who's in charge of Ambush Bug, or had him as a patient. And he's very annoyed that they released Ambush Bug because he wanted to make his career on this. You know, he wanted to make the cover of the AMA journal. And he's like, sorry, we had to release him. The board of directors, said he was okay. And then Derwood says something weird. He says, but he might hurt himself. I remember he said in our last session, I intend to die. He's going to attempt suicide, like the time he hung himself in a cell by his heels. And so then he says, fine, I quit. Besides, I have a spot on PM Magazine right after Chef Tell. And if you get that reference, you're probably old enough to have a subscription to ARP Magazine. Because Chef Tell is just one of those weird little things in the 80s that nobody remembers. I'm just digging so much of this art. I really like it. So now we see Ambush Bug running around like a maniac. He's on top of this car, and the parking meter turns to the red flag. And he says, oh, a lawbreaker. And he reads the car his rights. Later on, we see this officer at a police station. He hears the sound, and Ambush Bug has deposited the car on the steps of the police station with a note. Another Buick brought to justice. Now we see Clark Kent at, I think he's at his the Daily Planet, and Ambush Bug shows up, dressed as a samurai for some reason, calling himself the Amazing Ginsu. I freaking love this panel. This is such a beautiful panel. I don't know if it was because Ronin was out or had come out a year or two earlier, and he was doing an homage. And for some reason, he slashes Clark's typewriter to bits with his sword. And Ambush Bug talks about, he says, I intend to die. That's why I can do anything. And then he says, I'm planned to commit Harry Carey at the end of my 6th episode. And Clark Kent actually says, maybe you should do it at the end of your 1st episode, i.e. now. And then here's one of those weird, fourth wall things. He says, you really think if I was going to slice my bot open now, Giffen would hide me behind this door? And then the credits are police blotter. And I haven't even told you most of the credits here yet. So they make all the credits always kind of like funny. So Keith Giffen for willful and malicious plotting and involuntary penciling. Robert Loren Fleming for ballooning without a license. Bob Oksner for inking while inspiring to riot. And then Anthony Tolan is the colorist John Costanza letter. Julius Schwartz for gross negligence. It's important to mention Julius Schwartz, not only because he's a famous editor, but he becomes a character in these comics. Keith Giffen will refer to him a lot and kind of make fun of him. Here's number 563, January 1985. And we see this cover, kind of an homage to an old Jimmy Olsen type cover. Here's Jimmy. He's all like, he's been turned into a boy blob. Of course, it doesn't really matter to the story. But it's just a ridiculous cover. This is weird, this running gag he has. Francis the Horse Clopalong presents Black Beauty. So I think it's supposed to be a pun about Francis Ford Coppola, but it's so off, but kind of, I don't know, it's a great weird little, he brings it back a bunch of times. So we see all these famous DC reporters. First Clark Kent, and we see that he's still obsessed about Ambush Bug because he's reporting a news story. He says, the ambassador met with PLO leader Yasser Arafat. We see this guy, Ronald Morris. I don't know what he's from. He's talking about the Buick on the police steps. And then we see Jack Ryder with the alter ego of the Creeper, who's a reporter. And he's talking about this event. And then this is really weird. Bethany Snow, who was the reporter in the new Teen Titans by Wolfman and Perez, which were super hot then. And she's reporting that I'm here to force fans of George Perez and or the Teen Titans to shell out good money after bad. I guess implying that New Teen Titans fans will buy this issue just because Bethany Snow's in it, who's a character from New Teen Titans. And this is the weird thing. It totally looks like Perez. Like, Giffen's an amazing mimic. We see, and now we see Dr. Durward Denton and doing his little healthcare minute. Now we cut away to Ambush Bug. He's fixing one of his electronic bugs. He's fiddling with it. And all of a sudden, it explodes. This is another page where I just love these. The panelology has a really interesting explosion effect there. Across the country, all of his bugs fritz out. And he starts glowing. But of course, he's happy about it. He starts dancing. And then he turns black. And he says, now I'm black. Oh, spit. Cut me some slack. This is jive. So's your mama. I guess that could be considered offensive, but I don't know. I think it's pretty harmless and just silly and funny. And then he says, my costume, it won't come off. I can't get it off. And this drunk guy who's overhearing him outside the door says, not to worry, pal. It happens to a lot of guys. So this is like so weird. This in a Marvel DC code-approved comic, they're making a joke about the hero being impotent, or can't not be able to get it up. So it's just very weird. I probably didn't even get that when I read it as a kid. So I guess he doesn't want to go out with this black costume. So he has this weird horse outfit. Maybe this is Francis Ford Coppola or whatever his name is. And he realizes that he doesn't need the bugs. He can teleport all by himself just due to his costume. So that's a change in Ambush Bug. I'd even mention Ambush Bug first appeared, I believe, in like Legion of Superheroes or something. I can't remember, to be honest. He had a few appearances before these short stories. Maybe he was in DC Comics Presents before this, and he kind of had this weird cult status. People were like, hey, we want to see more of this guy. So it's kind of weird that such a bizarro character kind of was like a hot fan thing for a while. We cut away to this thief who's robbing Jimmy Olsen's apartment, taking his TV. Superman shows up, and with a big whoosh. And the guy says, whoosh? And Superman goes, yeah, whoosh. So, and then Ambush Bug shows up. And Superman grabs the guy and whooshes away. And Ambush Bug says, hey, you letterer, is whoosh the only sound effect you know? So the next panel, the sound of Superman flying is boing. And Superman saying, I've never gone boing before. Look at this amazing panel. Like Superman totally in shadow. This is just so interesting to me compared to the rest of the art. It's very chiaroscuro-esque. So Superman takes the felon to the police station. And it turns out that Ambush Bug has rushed ahead and he's the desk sergeant. And look at this, speaking of like the Sampoyo thing. In this comic, in the background, in this case in the foreground, Giffen really draws all these amazing like background characters. And you can tell he's just loving drawing these weird, interesting faces and body types. And then look at the shading here. Very interesting, especially for a DC comic. So now we get, all of a sudden, Ambush Bug starts telling his origin again, but this is more elaborate. It starts in a distant planet called Schwab. This planet's culture, they had award ceremonies every day. This guy, Brum-L, was, he won the Schwab's Best Dressed Man Award multiple times. Brum-L, like Beau Brummel. He has so many little references like to pop culture and stuff. Like every panel is peppered with them. So one day, Brum-L received a galactic chain letter, which he discarded. He broke the chain. Everyone knew about it, and he became basically all the newspaper headlines were like, Brum-L dooms planet. Look at that face right there. It's just such weird drawing for, mainstream comic. Because this comic sold pretty well. These were best-selling comics. So basically, Brum-L realizes that he's heard of Jor-El of Krypton, who also broke a galactic chain letter. So he realizes his planet's probably doomed. He makes a spaceship, and it only seats one. He thinks about sending his wife Larda, or maybe his son Mongrel, but then he decides just to save his wardrobe because he's such a natty dresser. He sends the ship off into space. A gigantic radioactive space spider bites it, and this rocket ship limps pitifully to planet Earth. It crash lands on a roof, which happens to be the roof of Erwin Schwab. And that's what broke his TV, the reception. It crashed through the antenna, and that's what... and when Erwin went up to the roof, all the other clothes were destroyed, except for this Ambush Bug costume. And that's when he went to the library for the first time, and that's what set him on his path as a superhero. We're going to find out later that another article of clothing survived. Meanwhile, back on Schwab, Brummel's just like, who gives a shit? The whole planet's going to explode anyway. And he does a countdown to 0, and then the planet's fine. He's like nuts. So now back to the present in the police station. And then like Superman flies away. This part is kind of confusing. And then all of a sudden there's police outside. I don't know why they're not in the police station. And they're like, come out with your hands up. And we see this big shootout. And Superman just flies away in disgust. He doesn't want to deal with Ambush Bug anymore. He says, now I've heard everything. Planet exploding, father building a rocket ship, sending it to Earth. That's the dumbest origin story I've ever heard. And then he says, Great Krypton, that's my origin. You guys, look at this amazing just cityscape of Times Square. That is totally Alex Toth. And then the credits this time are the Golden Antenna Awards. Best plot, Keith Giffen, yada, yada, yada. Guys, send in the comment section. I've been recently hearing on podcasts all these guys pronouncing it Alex Toth. My whole life I've thought it was Toth. Am I wrong? I don't know. But I'll try to keep saying Toth just because I have no idea. Now we have number 565, came out in March 85. And we got some heavy hitters here on the cover. We start off, this story is called Sellout, or Manna from Mando. Mando's another one of those things where probably people don't even remember Mando, but for a few years, if you were a comics fan, it was pretty important. It was this higher quality newsprint paper. It held the colors much better. First comics, it was all on Mando. A lot of the independents used it more. But DC and Marvel had select titles with Mando, and it did look way better, the printing. But yeah, I don't think young comic fans have any idea. So we see this guy, his name's Peabody. He's part of this firm, almost like an advertising firm, and he's telling us his plan for, I guess, increasing the sales of Ambush Bug. I really love his character design. Just looks like some European artist. Next we have In Search of Superman Blue, Superman Red. Ambush Bug goes to the Fortress of Solitude, asks him if he'd like to be in his first issue of his miniseries. So I remember earlier I said that he planned to kill himself after the 6th episode. I think these were so well received that's why there's not 6 episodes. They just said, let's give him a miniseries. And that's what happened. So I think the news is already out. So he's talking about this upcoming miniseries in the comic. And Superman's all like, you're going to make I don't want to be a laughing stock. He's like, no, we're going to talk about your greatest adventures. It'll be like a tribute. Remember the time you turned into a caveman? And remember the time you fell in love with the statue? And how your cousin Supergirl fell for a horse? And he's just cracking up. And he's recounting all of the bizarro, silly Mort Weisinger stories, which do make Superman look silly. And we just see Superman getting angrier and angrier. And he basically just knocks Ambush Bug right out of his Fortress of Solitude. And then this is Ambush Bug is going to get more and more like this, where he just forgets about the plot and just puts in these funny pages. So here comes the inarticulate bug versus the super intelligence of the reader. And this is weird because Kirby was still alive, working at DC, and it says it's Kirby magic, but he spells it weird. Almost like, I don't want to admit I'm taking from Kirby, but it's pretty obvious. And he's saying goob, arp, moo, grek. That's a pretty great Kirby homage. It kind of captures that dynamic style of Kirby. It really looks like it's coming out at you. The fingers are so blocky and weird. Next, In Search of Batman, or Poundwise and Penny Foolish. We see Batman in the Batcave, and he's doing a crossword puzzle, and Ambush Bug pops in and lands on the penny, and then like a Warner Bros. Cartoon character, he's all like, whoa, and the penny starts rolling and it crashes. And Ambush Bug says, well, if you won't get started on my book, can I join the Outsiders? I really like the way he draws Batman. He really makes him like this very dark looking, almost emaciated though. But this looks great to me. It's like I would have loved to have seen him do Batman back then. Now we have a parody of the Omega Squad, which just came out around this time. This is so odd though. I don't even know what half of these parodies are supposed to be. It's called the Uh-Oh Squad, with Blotto, this giant clown, Ms. Mohawk, Ambush Bug, and Jerry Mathers as the Cleaver. pretty dopey. He's like a Bushido, whatever, samurai type dude. And I think in the Omega Squad they did have a big lug like this, like all the super teams seem to have. But other than, I don't know, Ms. Mohawk, I used to read Omega Squad back then. That was a very hot comic when it came out. Now in search of Wonder Woman, or Baby I'ma Want You. He's even referencing Bread, the soft rock group. We see a mugging is going on in Washington, D.C., and Wonder Woman shows up and clocks the guy. Another great panel. That just looks so good to me. Kind of like Alex Toth. And it turns out it's Ambush Bug in drag. And Ambush Bug tells Wonder Woman that her name is Mrs. Sappho, but you can call me Sufferin'. So this whole thing is just so Keith Giffen could bring up and make fun of the fact that Wonder Woman used to always say Sufferin' Sappho as a declaration back in the 40s. But then Ambush Bug makes the mistake of calling her Sweet Cakes, and he ends up in a tree. Wonder Woman throws him up there. And here's where it gets really weird. So, meanwhile, in the midst of a plotting session with Julia Schwartz, and Keith Giffen is saying, listen, you know that whole polar bear in a snowstorm routine? I think John Byrne had just done that Alpha Flight issue that was all white. Most of it was white, which is word balloons, because it took place in a blizzard, and you couldn't see anything. So he's basically saying, hey, I'll do the same thing, but it'll be all black. And then John Costanza, the letterer, says, wait, I have a better idea. How about Marcel Marceau in Soundless Outer Space? No pictures, no dialogue, one big black page. Isn't that hilarious? and Julia Schwartz just says, neither one of you are getting paid for this page. And then that guy, Peabody, comes back in. And now we see a park, and Ambush Bug is hanging out with this guy who turns out to be his guardian angel. But even though Ambush Bug says, I just thought you were a stinky, drunken old bum. And he tells him, hey, team books sell. And so we see the Titans Tower, and a resounding no from the Teen Titans to Ambush Bug. And there we get the credits. Once again, that's a great face. Really interesting. Caricatured face. Okay, let's get to that miniseries. Number 1. This is June 85, just a few months after that one. Maybe even 1 month after that one. And as you can, it's a parody of Superman number 1's cover. And pretty nice cover, very sharp. So this one starts off, we see an invasion fleet from the planet Tedious, and they have no comic books there. So they're coming to our planet to take all of our comic books. And there's a note from Ambush Bug. Since they'll be taking a copy of this comic, you better buy 2. Live long and prosper. I know I will. Ambush Bug. This story is called Ha 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 Wipeout. So we see people all across the country reacting to this. This one guy says, I seen a man coming out of the skies flying saucers. You seen a splash page, fool. The switchboard of DC Comics is flooded by hysterical comic collectors, and Ambush Bug is gloating. Meanwhile, we see that Durwood Denton guy again, and he's basically bad-mouthing Ambush Bug. He still thinks he should be locked up. Here's another one of those jokes, kind of risque for the Comics Code. Yeah, Durwood says, I'm convinced that Ambush Bug has a massive psychosis. Ambush Bug thinks, darn right, none of my dates ever complain. Making a joke about his dick, his huge schlong. And Spider-Man never does that. So the phone rings. He's like, oh, I got a case. And it's just some guy who thinks it's the pizza place. He's ordering a pizza. But Ambush Bug doesn't realize. It's just like, he's pretty dumb. Meanwhile, outside, there's a big dump truck. Destiny Trucking Company on its side. And it crashes. And we see a little toy doll fly out of it. And flies right into Ambush Bug's office. And Ambush Bug says, it's an omen. You'll be my partner. in my fight against crime, I'll call you Cheeks the Toy Wonder. That's a goofy looking design. Kind of funny. So now we see Ambush Bug training, quote unquote, training Cheeks. Cheeks is literally just a doll, but he treats him like he's a real kid. So they're on the rooftops, and then all of a sudden, the police show up. And I guess there's some terrorists in a warehouse. And Ambush Bug's very excited. He said, this is going to be your first adventure. And the cops come, talk to the terrorists. It turns out they're Republican terrorists. And they have planted a time bomb near these tanks of nerve gas. And the reason why is because they want to force Congress to vote in more nerve gas. They want to keep up with the Russians. Meanwhile, we see that this main guy, this main terrorist, one of his colleagues, has got his mother basically under wraps because she's a Democrat. She voted for Jimmy Carter. Another great face there. I love that. Yeah, Spaulding is her son. Spaulding's the leader of the terrorists. He's basically got his own mom keeping her hostage. Very odd. So the police are wondering what to do, how to get in there, and Ambush Bug sneaks in. He just throws Cheeks at at Spaulding. He's not even alive. Ambush Bug says, "You're really in for it now. I'm a registered Democrat." One of the guys panics when he sees Cheeks the Toy Wonder. He's like, I better run. And then he realizes what a fool he's been. He's like, it's a freaking toy. And he kicks it. So then he is trying to hook up with the rest of the terrorist cell and this sporting goods store. And oh, this is Spaulding, Homer Spaulding. Ambush Bug says, your first name's Homer? I've always wanted to hit a homer, and he bashes it with a baseball bat. That joke's kind of corny, but I kind of thought it was funny. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep, I don't know. We have a little interruption of the superhero handbook. The 8th rule's never ever hit a woman, but Ambush Bug totally disregards it. So the old woman says, the time bomb, it's set to explode in seconds. And he says, relax, I've got my partner on the case. So he just left Cheeks near the bomb, thinking that he would disarm it. Even though he's just a doll. I love this how the giant explosion sound effect is ding. And there's an asterisk. Julie, I know this was supposed to say kaboom, but I had to let her it overnight, and I didn't want to wake up my wife. Sorry. John Costanza. This stuff is so zany and over the top. And then the whole comic, we get this free insert, this catalog of crap, the Ambush Bug merchandising catalog. We see that Peabody guy again, and just look at that crazy face. See how the Mando paper, look at this is like better than most newsprint comics, you know, when I was growing up. It really held the color well. We see Ambush Bug Aerobics Physical Fitness Workout Book. Then Ambush Bug Data Sheet. And this is just like a who's who page. But of course it's pretty funny. Has his turn-ons and turn-offs. His turn-offs are Smurfs, Smurfette, Smurf Giffen. And then this one I don't even understand. Late Night by Ambush Bug, author of other tales of TV terror. And then there's all these parody of Stephen King titles. They're not very good. But it's, I guess it's supposed to be those little, right before the commercial, David Letterman back in the day would just show a little still with the logo of Late Night with David Letterman on it. This is a very odd, random thing. It's not really funny at all. This is great. It's like a great parody of those like Sheldon Moldoff cute comics that were in all the backup, in the back of all those DC comics in the 60s. Little Bug. It totally looks just like one of those. And we also see an ad for the Ambush Bug teaming up with Super Turtle. Probably the first time we've seen Super Turtle in quite a while. Sometime later after the free insert. So now we see the aftermath of that explosion at the police station. The police sergeant's got the megaphones just like rammed into his mouth. And now we cut away to the cemetery for Cheeks. Cheeks' funeral. Ashes to ashes, sawdust to sawdust. And all these other toys are attending. And then it turns out Congress approves the nerve gas funding anyway, after all that. And of course, Ambush Bug is very bummed. And he's trying to drown his sorrows at a bar. And then his guardian angel shows up again and it says, cheer up. Death always sells. And Ambush Bug kind of feels a little better. Goes to get a big pizza to reward himself. And we see the Cheeks in the sky. And then he gets to his apartment. And with shock, as he opens the door, he says, dark side. Next, when Titans clash. I like this credits here. It's just pictographic. You know, pencils, Keith Giffen, balloons, Robert Lawrence Fleming, John Costanza, a bunch of letters. And we have the first letter page. So these letter pages are mostly jokes. They get a letter from Sugar and Spike. Bizarro, Crypto sends a letter where he just says woof, woof, woof. Superman writes a letter. It's all, you know, probably Robert Lawrence Fleming and Keith Giffen being goofy. Well, it definitely is. Here's number 2. Qantas, the koala who walks like a man. Ambush Bug can't even stand up. It's so ridiculous. So here's another, what I was talking about earlier. He just draws these great scenes of just like, oh, look at all these weird faces and body types and even the shading and stuff. So we see this woman's apartment. On the radio, they're announcing Mr. Mxyzptlk fighting Superman. And this woman inside the apartment thinks to herself, how many times do I have to tell them? On Earth 1, it's spelled Mxyzptlk. On Earth 2, it's Mxyzl whatever. Polk? It's different by one letter. And then we see that she has a copy of Rima Jungle Girl comic that only lasted like 4 issues. I love this newspaper headline. Superman saves dessert. Plans on eating it later. And then we hear her narration. This is my city, my universe. My name is Johnny DC. I keep the continuity. Johnny DC was this little cartoon character that DC would use in their ads, where, you know, this little cartoon character would be like, hey kids, here's a new comic for you to buy. We'll actually see what she looked like in a later issue, or actually later in this issue. So Ambush Bug is in a store. This is how he goes out. He never takes his uniform off, so he puts on Groucho Marx glasses, and then we get the title here, The Koala Who Walks Like a Man. All cute. Now we see this weird bald guy who's like, oh, I gotta find Ambush Bug. And this is an interesting thing here. This is station WASP, WASP. Do you have a request? Yeah, the Jacksons. Click. This is WASP. Do you have a request? Could you play the new Prince single? Click. The next person says, could we hear Sinatra? You, sir, have won the request jackpot. So it's WASP station, the radio station, and apparently they don't like to play any black artists. It's just a weird joke to put in a DC comic. So this bald guy shows up at Ambush Bug's place, and he tells them a story. He says, in Pennsylvania, there's this place, Paddywhack. I worked at this place. I was the janitor at this like research center. There was a doctor there named Quentin Qantas, and he wanted to duplicate and distill the root chemical of cuteness. They were draining koala bears of their life fluids. So basically, this janitor wanted to be a whistleblower. He's just like, he couldn't take it anymore. Especially when he saw that Dr. Qantas was turning into a koala. That's pretty funny looking. Look at that fucking inking there. That is crazy. So he becomes more and more koala-like, and that's when he realized he must tell the world, or at least try to get Ambush Bug's help. And I guess the koala bear's gotten very big. And right then, a giant paw, koala paw, crushes that guy. Ambush Bug says, I'll take the case. But first, what to wear? And then here's a parody of those old comics where they'd ask kids to send in costume ideas for the characters. Very silly. And then we just cut away to this, the Ambush Bug Guide to Collecting Comics. And this just totally skewers fandom and fanboys and collectors. It's kind of a, you've read it all before. Nothing that great. Now we see Johnny DC, and she says leaping lizards because she sees this giant kaiju koala. But everyone's just saying, oh, look how cute it is. The kids are like, Mommy, I want one of those. Look at this amazing color effect here when Johnny DC transforms. That's just very odd for, I guess it's the Mando paper allows that. And she turns into Johnny DC. This is the character I was telling you about. That's what she looked like. So she rushes out to fight Qantas. And he snorts on her and basically knocks her to the ground. It looks like she's fatally injured. And then it gets really fucking weird. All of a sudden, we see this golf announcer. And he's just like, okay, we're on the 18th hole here, where Qantas, the giant koala, is about to take the lead. And then all of a sudden, off-screen dialogue. This is Julia Schwartz. Keith, Bob, you guys want to get paid? Get back to the story. Just such a weird little interlude. So now we're back in the city. Qantas is rampaging around. Look at this amazing panel here. That lettering almost looks like something from a Harvey Kurtzman comic from the 50s, but way weirder because it's sideways. This is just like a great piece of abstract art, this panel. It's some amazing pop art to me. So now the cops show up. It's that same cop who got his megaphone rammed into his face last issue. He's like, Qantas, give yourself up. And it looks like Qantas just tears through these guys. We don't see it, but we see his chewed up megaphone flying through the air. Qantas steps right on Ambush Bug and flattens him. Meanwhile, Johnny DC hasn't moved. Doesn't look good for Johnny DC. And then meanwhile, I don't know why it's backwards. Maybe the reference to the Mixoplick thing. And so Ambush Bug's brilliant plan is right out of the Bugs Bunny playbook. He finds a female koala outfit and basically tries to seduce Qantas. And his tongue sticking out. Qantas' tongue sticking out like, ooh, it's working. But he just throws Ambush Bug in his mouth and swallows it. His tongue was out because he was hungry. And then we have this weird sequence where he's being, ingested by the koala. He lands in the stomach. He's being digested by the bodily fluids, stomach fluids. And there's a guy in there. It's Dr. Qantas' assistant. I guess probably the first person he ate. Just a very weird sequence. How why these colors? It's just odd. I guess it's pitch black in there, so there'd be no detail. Ambush Bug pops out of there, covered in goop, and he goes to that patty whack place. The doctor in the stomach told him that there's an antidote, and so Ambush Bug starts using the laboratory. He keeps making explosives and blowing himself up, but finally he figures it out. Meanwhile, and here's another one of those weird things. Meanwhile, even as I speak, the meanwhile captions go larger. The end is near. And Ambush Bug shows up with this giant cotton swab with alcohol in it. And he lands on Qantas. And then we cut back to the golf guy. And he's just calmly talking about the golf game. And Julia Schwartz kicks in again. He's just yelling at Keith Giffen and Robert Lauren Fleming. He's like, guys, get back to the story. And I like this, how the meanwhile caption is like running into the panel like a cartoon character. So the reason why he dabbed him with that alcohol drenched cotton swab was because he has a giant hypo with the serum or the antidote. I just love the idea that he actually did the cotton swab first like the doctor does, because he didn't want him to get an infection. It works, turns Qantas back into a human, and then right then, this giant putter crushes Dr. Qantas. So it's, even though he was the giant koala with the golf club on the previous, now he's being killed by this giant golf club. It's just so odd. And then we see that golf presenter again, and Julia Schwartz off camera says, all right, I warned you. And Julia Schwartz draws on him like a scar and a mustache. There's no rules in this comic. So now Ambush Bug, saved the day, I guess. And so he's at McDonald's. He's hungry. And the last panel here is like, no, not you. Look how interesting this is with it's just a weird looking panel. And then it's Darkseid delivering his French fries and hamburger with this little McDonald's hat. This is like one of the funniest running gags I've ever seen in a comic. And then it says, next, postponed from this issue, When Titans Clash. The story you've been waiting for. Another letter page. And now we're up to number 3. Now, guys, this is a special issue, and this is the one that really sealed the deal for me when I was, I was 17 maybe when this came out. I read this comic over and over because I just thought it was such great satire and stuff. The Ambush Bug History of the DC Universe. So we start off with the Ambush Bug telling us about all the multiple worlds, Earth 1, Earth 2. But, now that DC has cleaned up their continuity after the crisis, Ambush Bug reminds us that there's some forgotten heroes of yesteryear we should remember. And so it's just basically like this fun, there's no real plot in this. So he starts off with Egg Foo, the ridiculous villain from Wonder Woman. Tells us, the history of Egg Foo, what happened in that first issue. And then, but each of these little stories about these weird characters ends with an interaction with a mystery woman. So apparently Egg Foo was defeated when some mystery woman gave Wonder Woman the recipe for quiche, implying that Wonder Woman turned Egg Foo into a giant quiche. We see Wonder Tot, also from Wonder Woman. It's Wonder Woman as a little toddler. And it's so, like, Keith Giffen doesn't even have to try to be funny. He's just telling us the plot of these. And they're so ludicrous that it's kind of hilarious. All these characters were, like, the 60s at DC were just crazy. They just had the goofiest comics. In this one, the mystery woman, I think, adopts her, she adopts her with no forwarding address. Next, we have Whatever Happened to Binky. Binky was DC's total Archie ripoff from the 60s. As you can tell by the art style, they even try to rip off Dan DeCarlo. And all of the buddies of Binky are like, yeah, it's that woman he started hanging out with. I know she's up to it. That's why. And then he disappeared. So we got more clues to this weird mystery woman. And here's Super Turtle again. Super Turtle is so damn cute. And, of course, he has a mysterious end. Look at this guy, Quisp. from Aquaman #1. God, it's ridiculous. And this is amazing. They got Fred Hembeck to draw a page where this father is telling his daughter, oh, what story you want to hear? And she says, I want the origin of Ambush Bug. And Ambush Bug shows up and says, hell no. You're not going to reveal all my secrets. I just really like the way he draws Ambush Bug. And the coloring there. This Mando paper really is better than your average newsprint paper. The Legion of Super Pets, Crypto and Streaky, they each get their own little weird theme song. Beppo the Super Monkey and Comet the Super Horse. I just love the idea of a Legion of Super Pets. Here's the Green Team, Boy Millionaires. And this was, I think, only had one issue from Joe Simon. It was a Joe Simon creation in the 70s. Ridiculous, utterly foolish and silly comic. I have it. And they're just all these teen millionaires who make a club. Except for this guy. I'm Abdul Smith and I don't have any money. I'm just a jerk. Very funny. Oh, there's Cheeks. And all Ambush Bug can say is choke. This fucking thing is perverse to me. This is like more repulsive than anything like Charles Burns has ever drawn. Apparently it's this race called the Aries with a Y. They fought Green Lantern. But look at that repulsive thing. That's disgusting. Here's a Batmite, the later years. Batmite's bemoaning the fact that Batman used to be, all fun and games. But now he's all the creature of the night with a 30-foot-long cape and no sense of humor. We also find out that Batmite is dating Starmite, who looks like Starfire from the Teen Titans. Then there's one of those another fake ad for, that totally looks like the ads back then. And this one's Bop a Bad Guy, where you put your nose close to the paper. It looks like the fist is hitting his face. Now we have the Passivity book, as opposed to Activity book. A little science page featuring Superman. This one blew me away as a kid, even though I still don't get some of the references. Ambush Bug around the world. Almighty Buck from England. You bloody, bloody fools. I'm not quite sure what artist he's imitating. I imagine it's a 2000 AD artist because it seemed like that was the only English comic that anyone knew of at the time. But look at this French one, Wee Wee. Look at this great Mobius pastiche. Mitsubishi from Japan. Great little manga parody. And then I love this one because it's kind of obscure. American Base from the Philippines. And he totally tries to kind of duplicates that Philippine art style. God, I love shit like this. How to draw Ambush Bug and how to make teriyaki burgers. He combines it. Here's the recipe for teriyaki burgers. Oh, there's another page I loved. What if Keith had blown the deadline on this issue? Julie could have asked Jack Kirby. Look at that great Jack Kirby. Or Ernie Colon, the longtime artist of Richie Rich. I love this one. Frank Miller. Totally looks like it. Steve Ditko. This was my favorite though as a kid. Gil Kane. Look at that. The up the nostril shot. Only Gil Kane would do that. And then he's actually saying, my boy. When did you say it was due, my boy? Which is an homage to Gil Kane. He would say that to everybody. He'd call him my boy. And Robert Lauren Fleming. And it looks like he really drew this, I think. So he's not an artist, obviously, but yeah, you could have worse than that. The Ambush Bug Mart, which is a parody of those, ads in comics with all the goofy stuff. And trying to see if there's a good one I should. Yeah. We've seen that parodied so many times. Look at this goofy guy. His name's Krill. He was Space Ranger's assistant or pal. So dumb. Look at this cute little guy. Mr. Doodles Duck. He's invited to a dinner party at the House of Mystery. Our chef plans to prepare canard l'orange, duck à l'orange. And now we see the House of Mystery. Look how many different styles he draws, and this looks so good to me. Look at Kane's face here, the way the really little blocky little chunks of shade. So apparently the House of Mystery is up for sale. This real estate agent's coming by. But I love the fact that on TV we see Monster Horror Chiller Theater. I wish there was a picture of Dr. Tongue and Bruno. Buggy's Rules of Water Safety. Don't drown. Next we see the Inferior Five. And their leader, Merryman, here is complaining about how, like, we did this comic parody first back in the 60s. Oh, God, this one's funny. This one, Ambush Bug can't even finish it. He's just breaking down laughing. This is about Ace the Bat Hound, which is a real comic where Batman and Robin had for one issue or two issues, had a dog partner. And they even had to put a mask on him to protect his secret identity. He's a dog. And then look, we get Julius Schwartz. And of course, he's just totally making fun of him. Well, he does honor him, but then he just kind of, the way he draws him is a great caricature. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Julius Schwartz. He's saying, Giffen, what is this crap? It's page 18 and we haven't even had a fight scene. So next we see how to draw comic books, the grid and how to use it. And we get a 2-page fight scene. The whole time Ambush Bug is, though, giving us a lesson. First, divide the page into squares. It's interesting that he says first into 12 equal squares, even though this is a 9 grid. And then he says leave white space between the panels, which he never does. This guy's such a goofy monster. And then the monster does this total backflip and thooms Ambush Bug. I love stuff like this. And the Ambush Bug goes through the panel. The monster says, you forgot to tell them not to violate the panel borders. And here's Ambush Bug at the bottom here in this white void. Oh my God, look at this guy. I never seen this guy before. Mopey. I guess he fought the Flash. Ridiculous. Another dead-on parody ad from those like Coney Island places. So many comics had this 18 cents off if you show this coupon. Bizarro World. And we meet Bizarro Ambush Bug #1 with his craggy face. An ad for a record. And look at this guy. His name's Glop, I think. And this is another, I think he fell in love with Wonder Girl or something. So silly. And here we see Johnny DC. And Johnny DC tells us she's the mystery woman who led to all these characters disappearing. She says, I did it all for continuity. I don't want these characters in my nice, clean continuity. Everything must be perfect and consistent and pure. And then all of a sudden, somebody vaporizes her. Who could be capable of such a despicable act? It's Darkseid! We really mean it this time when Titans clash. Oh, God, that's funny. Letter page. My whole childhood, I pronounced it Darkseid until I saw, the Super Friends cartoons. I was like, oh, it's Darkseid. I get it. And now we have number 4. This is interesting because it features Scabbard. He's the villain from Thriller, which was coming out at the time. That's the comic written and created by Robert Loren Fleming, the scripter of this series. Just a very weird crossover. Thriller didn't sell very well, and I don't think they ever brought back those characters. Nice cover, though. So we start off with a little biology lesson about the real ambush bug. There is a bug called the ambush bug. That's what he's named after. Kind of a repulsive little critter. And he just tells us a total science lesson. But he talks about how his cousin is, Erwin Schwab. Oh, it's his brother-in-law, he says. Erwin Schwabicus is the... So now we see a cop station. They're using the head of Scabbard as an ashtray, or at least the mask. Next we see the evidence locker, Scabbard stuff. I guess, I don't know how, but his corpse is in there because he regenerates. Bursts out of the locker, but he still doesn't have a head. So I guess in thriller number 4, I guess somebody chopped his head off. So he rips the head off this cop, puts his mask on it, and then shoves it on his own neck. He can still taste the cigarette butts in his mouth. So he thinks, he basically says, Thriller and her assistants, they killed me. I must get revenge. I'm going to head to the Trinity building where they operate out of. Now we see Ambush Bug at a sushi restaurant. Scabbard runs through the place, or just walks through the place, and Ambush Bug says, that guy means trouble. I better follow him. Now we see Scabbard on the streets. Everyone's running scared from him. He's like, I just want directions. Will somebody give me directions? And then we see a flashback to thriller number 4. And we see how Scabbard got his head chopped off by a helicopter blade. And Ambush Bug is reading thriller number 4. He's trying to figure out who the Scabbard guy is. So now Scabbard is running around threatening people, and Ambush Bug shows up dressed as a fencer. And then we see a note here. Dear Julie, Keith Giffen is down with a 24-hour virus. I know you need the next page right away, so I had our son Kyle draw it. I hope I did the right thing. I love this page. I suspect this is not a little kid. This is really Keith Giffen. But it's just a few months ago, we looked at that Jack's Diary comic by Jack Mendelson, where his whole shtick was to draw like a little kid. Because you can tell by the layouts, it's actually like, you can tell it's not some dumb little kid. But he does a really good job making it look like that. Bad, good. Ouch. Mommy. I like this plane drops a nuclear bomb on Scabbard, and he points an arrow to the cloud with it says Reagan. So back to reality here. Scabbard is kicking the shit out of Ambush Bug. This stuff looks great to me. I just love this art. And the coloring looks amazing too. And then Scabbard realizes that he's in the wrong book. And he says, yeah, I thought this was thriller. I gotta go. And then I love this, how he walks off panel out of the comic into this white void. So now it seems like Ambush Bug's in this white void, and him and Keith Giffen and Julie Schwartz are all like, what are we gonna do? We got no story after this if Scabbard leaves. So one of them says, I'll think of something. Wait, I got an idea. And so we get a connect the dots page. And then we have the brilliant idea was the death of Ambush Bug. Not a hoax, not an imaginary tale. Ambush Bug says, forget it. Think of something else. Next we have Ambush Bug in hard socks. So here we start this new story that's just ludicrous. But here's some wicked Sampoyo-like drawing from Giffen. Look at this stuff. So we see this guy. He's in a theater watching a horror movie. And meanwhile, Ambush Bug is at the laundromat. He thinks to himself, like 1,000 hack comedians have over the decades. He says, how come you always lose one sock every time you do laundry? Where do those socks go? And then one of the socks actually starts crawling around and leaping out of the laundromat. And then it leaps into the sky and zooms off into space. So we see it zoom up to this thing floating in space, this giant thing called the Bureau, which looks like a bureau. And it turns out this is the stronghold of Argyle, this master of all the socks, who wants to kill all of mankind. Now we get the origin of Argyle. It turns out it's wrapped up in the origin of Ambush Bug. Argyle was an Argyle sock on that little spaceship that Brummel shot into space. He was bitten by that giant radioactive space spider. The Argyle sock got some of that alien energy. When they crashed, Erwin Schwab didn't see the sock hanging from a broken antenna. So the sock was resentful. He's all like, he's abandoning me. And so for the next few years, he hits the bottle. You know, he's so sad that he's all alone on Earth. He's got no pair. And a cat attacks him. It's so savage that the comics code censors the attack. But then wounded, he crawls into this factory or something. A secret laboratory. He learns how to use the advanced machineries to heal himself. He makes a metal mask for himself. And he figures out a way to steal socks from laundromats and bring them back to life. And that's his origin. These stupid socks. They're so goofy. This is such a dumb comic. So, Ambush Bug is leaving the laundromat, and all these socks attack him. All of his socks. When he wakes up, Argyle is looming over him, and he's threatening to kill him. This is another weird little, like, something for like a mainstream DC comic. We just see these people on the street. Really great characters, by the way. Really amazing designs. This white guy saying, uh-oh, a black. I'd better stay cool, relax. Maybe he won't notice me. The black guy saying, whoa, it's Whitey. Maybe if I be cool, he won't hassle me. So, I mean, ignoring the dialogue, but it's just an interesting little thing about racism in the middle of this goofy comic. He keeps doing that. It's such a weird thing. So Ambush Bug escapes from this this trap, but he's all wrapped up in this, I don't know, bed sheet or something. And then, and now without warning, it even says Ambush Bug family tree, and it's all these Admiral Schwab, Zenith Schwab. It's all TV names, and then the other side of the family tree is like Gilligan, Howdy Doody, Fred Mertz, since he was raised by a TV, you know. So we get a pin-up of Starfire. Here's some more great faces in the background here. So I guess it's the cast party. You know, once again, they're breaking through the fourth wall. It's like, oh, the comic's wrapping up. Hey, there's Darkseid. I was supposed to fight him the whole time. Might as well give the people their money's worth. And it turns out Darkseid is just a giant blow-up thing. And all he does is pull the plug on it. And he deflates. And Ambush Bug says, that'll get us an extra $50,000 in sales. And then he beseeches the reader to send in a postcard if they want to see another miniseries or regular series even. And then it says, what if there was a next issue? The Marriage of Ambush Bug. We see all these female characters from DC, the DC Universe, and the janitor sweeping up, and that's the end. Letter page, and we're done. So there you go, guys. A bunch of Ambush Bug comics. Now, I hope you guys like this okay, because I got 3 more after this. I'm going to do a full deep dive into Ambush Bug. This is just the first episode of 4. So if you don't like it, I guess fair warning. But if you want to see more, stick around. Had a great time rereading these again. I'm really looking forward to checking out the next one. So hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and thanks for watching. And I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.